Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Abona Tennis Online Coaching Podcast. This is your coach, J.Y. Abona. We have a very special guest episode this week with Marty Damm Jr., current professional player ranked 175 in the world, getting ready for the French Open. Very kind of him to give us a little bit of his time to discuss his junior stories, his training, what it was like for him growing up as he moved up through the high performance space. He played other sports. His dad was a pro traveling. Then he also turned pro at 15, played in the U.S. Open at the age of 15 after winning the Kalamazoo wild card. Youngest team to ever win a doubles match at the U.S. Open with his partner, Toby Kodat. So very interesting story to hear what his life was like, because I think that's something I want to try to help parents with is, what is it like for most players when they move up and have a lot of success? And so hopefully we can learn from them. So hopefully you enjoy this podcast with Marty. Thanks. All right, Marty, thank you so much joining us over from Prague right now. So, man, thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. Appreciate that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool for me to have. We first met on the court when we were in Orlando. I don't know if you remember that time because there's only one time.
I do.
Yeah, you're on the court with Zach Spida, and it's been really cool to just follow both your journeys to see where you are, and it's really cool. It's awesome to see the way things have been really turning up for you. But I think I've always been really interested in the story of how did you get there in the first place, right? Now, everybody has a unique story, so that's what I want to get from you, which is your story. Obviously, everybody knows about the part with your dad and stuff, but I mean, how did you even get started in tennis? Was it because of him, or how did you get started?
Yeah, I mean, obviously a big reason was because of my father, who was an ex professional, and I think I gotta give a lot of credit to my older brother as well, who's a year and a half older. So we were always playing different sports together and always competing and trying to be better than each other in everything we did. So my first memories was when I was like 3, 4, just basically picking up my father's rackets and hitting balls against the garage door or front door, and my brother right next to me, and we were battling that.
Did they have red balls and orange balls and all that when you started, or no?
Yeah, I think I had a orange fluffy big ball. Yeah.
Okay, because when I grew up, we still didn't have it. So I was curious about that. But when your dad would take you out, because I know the older generations, they're still not on those balls, right? Everything yellow ball. When your dad took you out, was it yellow balls or what?
We had, if I remember correctly, it was a ball with like a little dot on it, and it was softer. I think it was a yellow ball, but it was noticeably softer, and it would drive me nuts because I would always want to beat like the older guys, and I was like, why can't I play with the harder, faster ball? But I think it was a great start for us, starting with the softer balls, obviously.
So you started tennis around 3, 4. Hockey, you were big into hockey as well. When did you start that?
I mean, we started all these sports kind of around the same age. I think my parents did a great job, allowing us to play lots of different sports. We played a little bit of golf, a little bit of soccer, ice hockey, and tennis. Those were kind of our main sports. And obviously my parents' background being European, so we didn't really play baseball or basketball or football. But yeah, I would say ice hockey was our second biggest sport, or at the time maybe the biggest with tennis. And we had an incredible team where Sebastian Corda was the age group ahead of us. It was me, my brother, and Toby Kodat, who's also playing on tour right now. So those were fun times, and like I said, I think I'm very grateful that my parents allowed us to play different sports. Teach us different things, and obviously tennis being an individual sport, playing hockey was great to have friends and being in a team environment for once.
Are you able to watch the playoffs over there in Europe now with the time change?
It's tough, but actually we have world championships in Prague, so I've been to 2 games already, so that's been nice. But yeah, NHL playoffs with the time change is brutal.
Okay, are you a Panthers fan or Lightning fan?
Lightning.
Okay, all right. I'm from Miami. I'm a Panthers fan. So yeah. So when did you start to separate a little bit more towards tennis? I know a little bit was out of your hand to make that choice, but around what age was that?
It was basically when my sister was getting to a point where where she needed a little more attention. I think she was maybe starting school, and my mom back then was alone because my dad was still traveling and playing. So it was getting tough for her to kind of handle that. So I would say around 11, 12, 10, around that age was when we kind of started separating a little bit. And at the time, like you said, it was kind of out of our hands, and we didn't think much of it. But we definitely missed going out there and getting on the ice and being with our friends.
So, I mean, but you played hockey for 6, 7 years, like while still playing some tennis as well.
Yeah. Look, like I said, we let go of those other sports, golf and soccer, and at one point, hockey and tennis were our biggest sports. Yeah, I didn't play tennis daily, up until a little bit later. So we were doing three times a week, tennis and then hockey, and we kept alternating until my parents were kind of like, all right, it's time to just kind of focus on tennis basically, which was understandable at the time, and I think we were too young to really like have our own sense of mind and make our own choice. So we wanted to be like our father, so we just kind of naturally just shifted towards tennis.
It wasn't like a massive deal to you.
No, back then, no. I think if we were a little bit older, I think if we were 14, 15, and we were a little more mature, then we would have definitely sat down and had more of a debate. But I think we understood it, pretty clearly that it was very hard for my mom, and I think back then we might have enjoyed tennis more, honestly.
And up until, because you were also playing golf as well. I mean, did you leave all those sports around the same time, or did you like some of those go first and then hockey was the last one?
Well, golf was mainly just taking private lessons at IMG. I wouldn't really say that was like a main sport of ours. It was kind of just to do something else. But I still play golf to this day. Way more than hockey. I go with Sebi Porta sometimes. We go and we skate and shoot. But obviously, hockey is way more physical. So on an off day, I'm not really trying to go out there and skate for an hour or so. But we still play golf and hockey whenever we really get a chance.
And you had you were already pretty good at 12s, right? In 12 and under tennis, right? I mean, you ended up becoming one of the best players already in the state of Florida. So, but when did you really start to crank up the hours? Was it when you left all those sports off? Because you said you're playing tennis like 3 days a week. But you got to be pretty darn good pretty young.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. And I look back at it, and I honestly, if I'm being honest, I think a lot of it was kind of my size. Going back to my younger days, I think, like you said, under 12s, I was maybe 1 or 2 in Florida, and not really traveling outside of Florida. I played here in Europe. I played some, I think it's called ETAs or IT, something like that in Europe. I played some local Czech tournaments as well, but I want to say my first tournament outside of Florida was Easter Bowl when I was 13, and I semied 14s there. I got 3rd place. But besides that, we were just playing level 5s, level 4s in Florida. Occasionally, if there was a super national like Bobby Curtis. But yeah, we were my brother and I. We didn't travel outside of Florida. Like I said, until I was 13.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the biggest benefits of being in Florida, right? I mean, you have so much good competition. You don't really feel the need to leave the state a lot, right?
Yeah.
So, and especially now that they brought, I think, are all the clay courts in Florida now for juniors and stuff? So, yeah, it's huge. I mean, even in 12s, I remember having to leave. I remember we would have to go play in North Carolina. 14s is actually in Fort Lauderdale, so that's still there. How many hours of tennis did you start to play? Like when you finally left hockey away and you left all these other sports and you started going to tennis, how many hours a week were you training? Because were you still going to regular school at that point?
Yeah, that's the thing. I was one of the few kids in my age group that was still. I went to private school up until I was in 7th grade, which obviously maybe to the audience that sounds fairly young, but for tennis it's quite some time. I think I was like I said 13, 14 when I was still going to school. So I was only playing in the afternoons. I was in a regular program. The hours were maybe 2 to 4, followed by fitness. So I was playing 2 hours a day, and then I left in-person school, and I think that's when I started ramping it up a little bit. I started going to Orlando more. I think that year when I got out of school is when USTA moved from Boca to Orlando. So it was closer for us. So I would start going there, and that's when I would, just do the kind of the typical, 2 hours in the morning, hour and a half in the afternoon with One Fitness. So that kind of became my new life was doing those hours.
And then before that, when you were doing those 2 hour drills, like, was it a lot of, I mean, how many kids were on the court? I mean, were you playing practice matches? I know it's a little different where you are because you have a lot more of experienced eyes trying to organizing stuff, but curious to know what that's like.
Yeah, I mean, so my private school had actually an academy there as well, maybe
Okay.
with 30 kids. And the better kids were a little bit more prioritized, and we had more of an individual plan. But it was still, I mean, there were times where we were four on a court, and occasionally I would get one on one time. But I think what my dad did a great job was not overthinking or over planning or kind of forcing us to be on court and do these specific things, because at the end of the day I was still 13, 14. My brother was 15. That's you're still a very young kid. So what I think was the best for me was to go out there with other friends and have fun. And the 2 hours I did was mainly to kind of enjoy the sport. And once the level started getting better and higher, then I think that's when it was kind of the time for me to move on from that, and that's when I went to IMG. So
Ha- Was your dad the
around
coach? Was your dad
what's
running
that?
those drills?
No, my dad was still on tour traveling with I think Martin. So my dad barely would see me. Occasionally he would take us to tournaments when he was home. But yeah, I was in a program just like any other kid.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, when I moved to IMG, that's when it was a little more intense. That's when I was going 2 a days most of the days with proper fitness, and actually working on my game.
And how was that? Like when you first made that big jump then on your training hours and how much time you're really dedicating? Like when you started doing that, was that because you had committed to just, all right, I'm going to try to go pro? Or it's like, look, I'm just really good in tennis. I want to put more time to it. There's a chance, but let's just see where it goes. Or were you like already, all right, I want to be pro?
I think a little bit of both. I think when I was a young kid, and obviously it helped that I was able to travel with my dad to some tournaments, and like I said, when he was coaching a top player, it was very motivational for me, and it was always like, oh, I want to be that. I want to be playing these tournaments. So in my head, I always knew I wanted to be a professional. I had zero idea what it took. Um, but yeah, also a little bit was seeing a little bit more success in bigger tournaments. I went to La Petitas. I went to Bolton before La Petitas. Eddie Hurt Orange Bowl. So you got a little bit of understanding of what my level was. Not only nationally but also worldwide. So I think it made it a little bit easier, to kind of be like, okay, I want to start being like the pros. And IMG was great at the time for me because there were so many good pros there. So I could train besides them and see how they train and in a way I try to copy them.
I think that's such an underrated part. I think a lot of kids get to miss out on just because they don't have pros training next to them. But you know, my dad was a pro, then he was a coach, so I got to see a lot of it as well. And I think because I got to see it, I just saw how it was done, so it just made it believable to me, right?
Yeah.
I didn't. It wasn't like something I only saw on TV. Where sometimes when you see things only on TV, it's like, oh, they must be just out of this world amazing, you know? But
Yeah.
then when you see it in person, it's like, oh, well, I do those drills. Like, oh, I know that I can do that. Like, not at the level, but you can see the work, and it's like, well, I can do that kind of work, right?
Yeah.
I mean, do you think that really helped a lot, just kind of being around that?
Yeah, I mean, it made a massive difference. A massive difference. I mean, I think there's so many, kids that are good at a young age, but like you said, they're not around that level. Maybe rarely or maybe never. And I was able to, be around those guys from when I was a baby, and then, like I said, at IMG. So seeing them do those things, it was very nice for me. And I'm a big fan of tennis, so I love watching matches on TV. And I would sit there and watch them practice as well. When my dad was with Martin Collegian, who got to top 30 in the world, I would go there and sit and watch their practices. I would occasionally hit in and obviously from the back, if you're a decent junior, then you can kind of hang with these pros at a young age. So it was very nice for me to be like, okay, I can hit with this guy. So why can't I try and be as good as him?
Yeah, yeah. Now, and you started playing ITFs, and how did you compare? There's a couple things to compare because a lot of people will say that, oh, there's like no need to go play ITFs. It's just, especially you're in Florida or US, we have good competition. Like, don't spend the money, right? I mean, I have my own thoughts on that, but I mean, what was your experience as far as just the atmosphere, the level of kids that you saw versus what you were playing at, maybe like at Easter Bowl and stuff like that? What did you think about all that?
Yeah, I have a pretty strong opinion about that as well. Like I was very fortunate through USTA that I got to travel around the world at a young age. At 14, I think I played my first ITF. Maybe at 13, I played one, and then by 15 and a half, I was three in the world. So I was able from then on. I was basically for a year and a half traveling around the world, and not only was I winning matches, but I was playing against people outside of the U.S. I was playing on red clay. I was playing on hard courts, indoor courts. So, I think in the U.S., a lot of players are the same. There's similar game styles and everything. And you go to Europe, it's totally different. And you see it in pros as well. So I was able to get better just by leaving the States and playing on red clay. Yeah, would I lose a few times? Yeah, I went to South America. I lost 3 or 4 times in a row, first round. But at that time, it seemed like the end of the world for me. But looking back at it, it helped me so much moving forward. These guys, they play differently, they train differently. Everything is every country has its own kind of method, and that's what gave me the most in junior tennis. Besides all the experiences of meeting new people and playing different events, the biggest thing for me in my game was learning and adapting to different surfaces, different players, different game styles, which I think sometimes in the U.S. It's more stereotypical games, where guys play this similar way, and everyone is like, oh, let's be top in this state, let's be top in the U.S. so we can go to college, And in Europe and other countries, I'm not saying it's good or bad, but in other countries they don't think about that. They want to be the best in what they do, and if they have to go to college or whatever it is, then they do it. But I feel like in the U.S. you kind of think too far ahead from a young age. I think that's a mindset that's been given by, I don't know if it's parents or if it's just kind of more natural because U.S. is so dominant in college. Not only in tennis, obviously, but academically, everything. In Europe, a lot of people didn't go to college. It's not the same as it is in the States. Like I said, I'm not saying it's good or bad, but that's what I kind of learned from a young age was traveling to these places and seeing how they are. And I think that was the biggest piece to my success at a young age.
Yeah, I have a lot of similar thoughts as well. I think ITFs is not so much about, oh, if you go play ITFs, you're playing literally the best kids in the entire world. Like there are some ITFs that might even be lower than your level 2, your level 3, right? Because now there's a lot more ITFs, so the levels spread out a lot more. But like you said, it's the experience that you get, traveling to different places and learning how to deal with that, learning how to play in different services helps your game. I always felt one of the biggest things too, like I guess 2 things. And, one, it was just motivating for me, right? I want to be a pro when I was young as well. So the fact that I was hanging in there with international kids with like, that was like, well, pro tournaments are international. So if I can hang with international kids, maybe I got a shot. And that was just motivating alone. Even if I didn't win, if I could hang in there, then that means like, okay, if I just get a little bit better, I can hang in an international stage.
Yeah.
And that's the pathway really to pros, right? So, and I think the other part too is just internationally, they dream a lot bigger, I feel.
Oh yeah.
They're a lot more connected to the pro game, where like you said in the US, they're so stuck on college tennis, but that's not the highest level of tennis, which is fine. You don't have to want to go pro, but I always felt like a lot of the top college players are actually, failed pros that tried to go as juniors, right? Yeah. So like, I always think like you reach for the stars, you fall amongst the clouds or whatever they say. Yeah. So if you're trying to go pro, you're always trying to be as good as you can be. Yeah. But in the US, everyone's stuck on that 12 UTR. Yeah. But it's like, so then they get stuck around 10 and a half, 11. It's like, just be as good as you can be and just keep going. So
Yeah.
that's what I always felt the international tournaments did for me. It's just keep dreaming, keep going, international stage, motivating. Yeah, and just the experience, but I feel like you grow up a lot playing ITFs.
Yeah. So much. I think obviously, people are in different situations, family wise, financially, and all these things. There's obviously, tennis is not cheap. And you got to dedicate a lot, through your family as well. So I get some people's sides, but like you said, there's, why not, train and do everything to the maximum to attempt to be a pro. And obviously, college is a great, kind of backup plan. I mean, there's very good tennis players in college right now. The level's gone up like crazy, but I think if I was younger and I was like, oh man, I really want to go to UF or whatever the top college was, then I think my tennis would progress to that level.
Right.
And if someone doesn't want to be a pro tennis player and they only want to go to college and become a doctor, then great. But I think if you actually truly want to be a professional tennis player, you can't have your mind stuck on college at all. And I think my dad, my dad is a very honest guy, and I think that's kind of how I go around life as well now. Is he told me, he said, look, if you want to be a tennis player, a professional tennis player, you got to do these things. And there'd be days he's like, hey, I don't think you're doing these things to become a professional tennis player, which is fine. But you can't sit here and tell me, hey, I want to be a professional tennis player and not be 100% committed, So I think that helped me so much, was honesty. And I think sometimes certain coaches are afraid to be honest with their players. I've based my team, around just honesty and keeping me accountable. UST did a great job with that as well. I think that's another big piece is just being straight up with your child or with your player, and kind of keeping them in track. But like I said, if they want to go to college, that's perfectly fine too.
Yeah. Well, and I think even if you want to go to college, don't limit yourself. I wonder if you've ever had this with some other, like maybe younger players that maybe you've come across. Like when I go hit with some kids, and I hit a backhand passing shot on the run that really it's not that difficult, they're like, oh, that's just insane. Like only a pro would do that. Or, oh, like I would never play against somebody. It's like, but right there, you're limiting your growth, right? You're telling yourself you don't need to learn how to read that shot, move to it, get better. It's like, why do you have to limit yourself just because you're going to college?
Yeah.
And that's what I think is the biggest difference with the juniors in the U.S. versus the juniors on the international stage.
Yeah.
We know 99% of the kids on the international stage are not going to be pros. Like they'll get to some level, but they're not going to be top 50 making money, right? Or top 100. But they're still dreaming and they're still going for it. And they're just trying to get as good as they can. And that's why I think a lot of them are overtaking college tennis players in the U.S. because as juniors, they just tried to get the most out of their game where juniors didn't. And so now college coaches are like, well, we want the best college players. So internationally, there's just a lot of better college players.
Yeah.
So now when you really started to go play out and you started to play these ITFs and train like this and really started to go all in, ever burn out?
No. I mean, honestly, no.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, I was in a unique situation where, like I said, big thanks to USTA for what they did to me, but I was always traveling in groups. I always had my best friends, Alex Bernard, Aiden Mayo, Dolly Blanche. We were always together. And we never were jealous of each other's success. We were never comparing, to each other. We were just out there, giving our all and experiencing these insane, moments and memories. So, I mean, what does burning out mean? Would I wake up some days and be like, I gotta practice. I lost early, I gotta practice. Yeah, of course. I mean, everyone has that. But did I ever, show up and like, I don't want to play this tournament because I hate tennis? I've never said that. I've never said the words, I hate tennis. I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this. Yeah, of course you wake up some days feeling worse than others. But that's the same even if you were going, to a 9-to-5 job. That's just how it goes. Not every day is your day. So no, I never got burned out. I never did. I was always happy to be there, and I was always fine going to Europe for 2 months, not seeing my family for 2 months. I was always fine with that, and I always tried looking at the positive side of it. It was just learning from it, and hopefully in the next few years it would pay out, and so far it did. Obviously, there were tough times, and sometimes weren't as fun, but I still got up and I would still do the work, and would be excited for the next tournament, the next match, and kind of keep going after it every week.
Something you mentioned there, it's so important. I saw the same thing with Riley, Tommy, Francis, Taylor, all those guys as they were growing up. Is just, I think, the environment around you, especially when you dedicate that much time and you do start homeschooling, so important. And not just coaches, but the players around you. You're not really a team, but you feel like teammates.
Oh, yeah.
You're going together. I mean, that sounds like it was a huge thing for you.
Yeah, I mean, he was massive. I mean, Bernard, Aiden Mayo, I mean, those guys. Bernard's playing at Ohio State, and Aiden Mayo's 300 in the world, and both darn good tennis players. And we've been together since we 12, 13. We went to La Petitas together, biggest junior tournament. We went to all Grand Slams together. We went to South America. We were all over the world together, and everything we did was together. Every dinner, every lunch we ate was together. Every time we lost, we would go out and we would watch the other guys match, and we would do everything together. We went to Australia, and I mean, our memories together are for the life. And like you said, I mean, those guys, Tommy, Riley, they started at a young age, and they all were able to get to top 30 in the world, which is amazing. Not every friend group can achieve that, but I'm sure those guys, if you talk to them, they're all going to say, "Oh, it was thanks to Taylor making the finals of ATP at 17, 18, whatever it was. That motivated them." And that's exactly how we worked. Obviously our overall levels maybe wasn't as good as those 4 or 5, but if it wasn't for them, maybe I would burn out. If I was always alone with a coach, alone in a hotel room, having no one to go to dinner with, then maybe things would be different. But I gotta give massive credits to those guys as well for making it fun and kind of feeling like you're just with your friends, just enjoying life.
Yeah, and even if you don't get to be top 20 or top 10, I mean, a lot of these guys are still playing. You're still playing. You guys are still so young. You have so much showing success. But let's just say then you guys even turn pro, right? But you still have these unbelievable memories that are never going to go away. That I think so many people they're afraid to even talk about going pro because they feel like if they don't make it, then everything's a failure. It's like maybe you don't get pro, but if you really go for it, you do have the opportunity to travel the world and play these ITFs. And you do it with your friends, like, man, that's just an experience that's priceless. You can't put a dollar amount on that.
No, you can't. You can't.
Yeah, I mean, so now at 15, I think everybody's asked you about this, but I want to hear it directly from you, which is U.S. Open, right? You win Kalamazoo doubles, youngest. Not only do you get to walk, that alone is probably already like, wow, U.S. Open, right? Then you get there and you win a match. I mean, I'm sorry, but you're 15. I mean, I don't know. Like, are you really walking in there thinking like, all right, like we got a shot at making quarters? If you do, great. But like, now you win a match. I mean, just talk about that experience.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. Toby Kodat, who was my partner there. Like I said, we've known each other since we were 4 years old, 5 years old. He's from Bradenton, both parents from Czech Republic. So we've gone through life, together. Maybe not every week, like, because he wasn't with USTA as much, but we've gone every level of tennis together. From junior tennis, Florida tournaments, ITFs, everything together. And we were in Kalamazoo. We were actually down, I think, a match point or 2 match points in the first round, and we ended up, having this crazy run. And yeah, we get to U.S. Open, and I remember we were like, man, what if, like, we had no idea what to expect. Like, wait, are we gonna be in like the adults' locker rooms because like we were playing men's now? We had zero clue. And our locker room was next to Rafa. We were seeing all these people, and I remember we were just at one point, the first day we got there, we didn't want to go back to the hotel. We just wanted to be in the locker room. We were just like, there's no way we're around these people, So that was insane. And obviously, the way you're treated at that level is pretty ridiculous as well. For a 15-year-old, we didn't deserve that. And yeah, we went out there. I think we played against Mitchell Kruger and Tim Smichek. I think it was Tim Smichek's last ever professional match, which I didn't know at the time. And yeah, we went out there and we played our best match, together, and the feeling was, I can't even describe it. We were totally on a different planet. We didn't expect, I just didn't want us to get embarrassed. I was like, I don't want to play the top team so we don't lose, 1-1 and everyone just laughs at us. But who can say at 15 they were able to play, the biggest tournament in the world, especially as an American playing the U.S. Open. Then that win was great. We got to stick around the grounds for a few more days, and then we actually played the team that just won French Open. We played on a big court. We got invited to the ESPN desk there, and we had a chance against those guys as well, the two Germans. So we had a break point for me to serve for the second set. So we were, I don't want to say right there, but I think it was 3-5, 2-5. So it was a week of our lives, and to do it together at that age, in the place we did it was a feeling we'll never forget.
That's amazing. Now, were you pro yet? Had you decided to be a pro yet?
Yeah, I think 2019. We both turned pro in 2019. Or I want to say maybe end of 2018. I'm not exactly sure, right when it was, but yeah, when I was 15, I was already a pro. Yeah. I signed professional clients and our professional contracts, and yeah, I was IMG's client. Yeah.
Okay, so you could take that check. All
yeah.
right. Yeah. Nice. So at 15, you're already pro. What was the deciding factor that made you go pro? I mean, a lot of kids are successful, but still hold off.
Yeah. Well, I don't remember exactly, but I remember my parents once sitting me down at our house, and they were like, "Look, Nike and Wilson, they want to sign you to a professional, athlete." And back then, I didn't know exactly what that meant. But they were like, "Look, do you want me to be a professional tennis player?" We had a long talk, and my dad was like, "Look, you got to change certain things if you want to be a professional tennis player. You got to do this. You got to dedicate it. You got to travel. You're going to be alone. It's going to suck at times, but if you want to do it, you do it." And I made a deal with them that if I do go pro, that I'm still going to get a college degree. So in a way, it looks like a crazy idea to turn pro at 14 and a half or 15 or whatever I was, but the only thing I was giving up was college tennis. I wasn't giving up a college degree or a high school diploma. The only thing I was giving up was playing college tennis, and to me that wasn't the end of the world, because all I wanted to do was be a professional tennis player, and my parents were like, "Look, we don't care if you finish college at 30 or 20 or 25. You're just gonna promise us that you're gonna do college." And that's that's a deal that I'm keeping up with them, and so yeah, I get to play tennis, and at the end of my career, I'll always have a degree to fall back on, and so yeah, obviously a lot of people had a piece of their mind, and I'm not judging their opinions either. It's a big decision you make, especially for an American, but everything felt right, and my parents were supportive, and I felt like I had the ability to actually be a top player one day, so I went for it.
Yeah, I think the point you made is so awesome. You can give up college tennis, but you can still get a college degree. You don't have to give both up. And if you're not playing college tennis, you're still living out your dream anyway. Yeah. So, okay, you miss out on college tennis, but you still get to try to be a pro and play pro events. I think people are I don't know if they talk enough about that part. Like, you can still get a college degree. It's okay. Yeah. So you're not giving up everything to where, I don't mean this in a bad way. I teach tennis now, right? Where it's like, oh, if you don't make it, you're going to be stuck teaching tennis. It's like, no, well, if you want, sure, but you can still go back to college or do it while you're playing and get a degree in something else. And that way, when you're done, you're ready if you want to do something else. Yeah. I don't think that part is talked about enough. They look at it as like, oh, no, you can't go pro. Like, your life is over. You're dedicating it to tennis for the next 70 years. It's like, no. And even then, if it does, it's still not a bad life. I mean, people are happy teaching tennis. So you're 15 and a pro. I wonder how this affected your thought process, because mine was a little bit different. So, I mean, I quit tennis after college, went to work in finance, and then I had to go play futures again, the ITFs, zero ranking, at like 23, 24. And I still remember when I was like how old was I? I was like 27. I was still like at an ITF. I'm like, what am I doing? But you go from US Open to still back to ITFs now, back to the lowest levels. Were you like, oh, well, I played here at the US Open. I know it's doubles, but you're still there. You got to practice with all the guys and all that. And are you like, oh, yeah, sure, I'll go play some ITFs. I'll be back here in no time. What was that like when you first started playing ITFs? But then, you had to stay there a little bit, which is actually normal, right? No one literally moves from, even Alcaraz and all that. They all talk about his meteoric rise. Like, guys still played a lot of challengers and ITFs growing up.
Yeah. No, I mean, like I said, I'm an honest guy and I come from an honest family. So, I knew I didn't belong at that level. No 15-year-old in the world belongs at that level. It's just basically impossible. So, no, I knew what was coming next. The hardest thing was for me actually going from men's US Open to the junior US Opens. That was so hard for me because we were there early. We won a round. I think we had 2 or 3 days to our next round. So we were already there for a week and a half. And then juniors start second week of men's singles. So we were there for so long. And it was getting long. And, we were both top 10 in the world. And I was like, obviously I was very motivated, very happy to still be there. But, mentally it was draining. It was tough. So that was tough. That was kind of where I had to like really reset big time. And I knew my level was futures. There was no hiding that. I think I actually finaled a feature right after the US Open. I think sometime in November, a 25K. But I still knew my level was futures. I was a 15-year-old kid. I was a kid, so I couldn't think like, oh, I should be here, I should be there. No, I knew like, okay, this is my schedule. 15Ks, 25Ks. Back then, 25Ks to me sounded like challengers. It was like, wow, playing a 25K. So I didn't think I needed to be at that level or I deserved to be at their level. I was very happy we were able to experience it, but I knew right then that, oh, we're going back down to the bottom, of tennis. And that's just the truth. We didn't deserve, or I didn't deserve to be anywhere higher.
Yeah. It sounds like, and I imagine that so much of your ability to just be honest and humble and just understanding of where you are and not get too big about it, even though it was an amazing moment, you just understood it. It's because of the team you had around you to just kind of keep you grounded. Hey, just get back to work. I know a lot of people that they have a little taste of any kind of success, and it's like, if they don't have that same success week after week, it's such a blow to their ego, right? It's such a blow to their confidence that like, it's really hard for them to recover. But for you, that's what I was curious about. And that's awesome that you were able to just, hey, yeah, it was awesome, but I know where I got to get to, and I know I got to work my way up.
Yeah.
That's yeah. Well, and so, but then I have to piggyback it with this too, because we talk about the ability to just be honest with where you are in your game. Even though you have big dreams, you still know where you are. You're not going to get too far ahead of yourself. I really thought one of the cool things was, like, I was reading your interview with the ATP, and I'm sure there's a party that might even be annoyed with how much you hear about this. Like, well, Alcaraz and Rune, they were your age and this, and they're at this level. And again, we talk about when people don't get the results they want right away, it's too much for them. And for you, you actually looked at it from such a healthy perspective where it's like, well, if they can do it, I can do it, right? Maybe it's taken me a little bit longer, but I know that I can do it. And where, again, how much of that, because I struggle with that when coaching like kids, right? If they might have 2 great weeks of practice, they might feel like they improved and everything. If that next match isn't a win and a big run in a tournament, you can just see their confidence just go down the drain within a week or two. It's as if they're great practices, they're great work, went all way, and it doesn't exist. And the only thing that justifies it is winning right now. But you were able to just be like, it's okay if it takes me longer. I'll get there. That's awesome. I don't, that, for you, it's great that you're able to have that, but I don't know if you understand how hard that is for so many like up and coming tennis players to have that healthy perspective, which I think comes back to the team and your parents around you.
Yeah. It wasn't easy. And sometimes it's still not easy. And you made a good point as well, as tennis is so brutal because your confidence can go away so quickly just because of certain matches or events that didn't go your way. And it's tennis is so up and down, mentally. I think it's more mental than it is physical at times because everyone can hit a darn good ball. And my 2019 year was pretty much insane. I was very fortunate enough to beat Alcaraz twice. I split one with Holger. I beat Kaboli, Tarante, all these guys that are top 100, top 10, top 50. And at that time, it was like, holy cow, maybe I could be the next top young player, like a Felix or a Chapo. Those were all my comparisons because I was beating all these guys. And I spoke to one of the Nike guys recently, and people back then, obviously me myself including, we didn't realize how good our level was back then. The level that we were playing at was insane. It was insane. I made semis of both Grand Slams at 15, alongside with other 15-year-olds. My years was Kaboli, Musetti, they're both a year older. But then we got Holger, Toby, Shintaro Mochizuki, Alcaraz, Luka Nardi, Hamad Medidovic. The names are insane. So at the time, I thought I was the best based on the results. I was beating these guys. I thought I deserved to think it. Obviously, as time goes on, it was harder for me. And I don't want to make excuses or blame anything, but with my height, it was an advantage in the juniors because I could overpower these guys. But then it became a disadvantage. I lost my identity in the pros. I didn't know what kind of game to play at that young age. I wasn't mature enough. And things were coming in a way easier in the juniors because of my size. And those guys were able to kind of stick to their game that they had at 15 and just get better. And I was lost. I don't know how to play on clay, which way against pros. I don't know if I should come in, serve and volley, take balls early. I didn't know. And my abilities were still pretty raw. So that was the hardest thing for me, was kind of looking around like I'm working hard. I have everything I need behind me. I have good coaches. Can't figure it out. Can't do it, And next thing you know, it's COVID hits. I'm 700 in the world, and these guys are semi-finaling challengers. And I'm just kind of scratching my head, looking around, and like, man, I'm lost. And my dad, my dad at times he was tough. He said, "Look, you're beating these guys. Like, you gotta wake up." And I was like, "Man, I can't." He's like, "Look, we all know it's gonna take you a little bit longer, but there's certain things you need to fully dedicate yourself to." So I sat down, I was looking at players, and I said, okay, this is the way I want to play. And I think that's, as of recently, why my results have been going up, was because I stuck to one game. And I just started focusing on myself, And I think, it's pretty obvious. Alcaraz he's once in a generation talent. It's insane what he did. So it's very hard to compare yourself to a guy like that, because that's not me. I'm not as fast as him. I'm not as talented as him. So do I think I could get to that level one day? Yeah. But it's going to take me time. I need to still get better at so many things and really look out after my body as a big guy. So, I think that was my thought process. And for a while I struggled with it, seeing these guys do better than me. But like I said, as of recently, I've kind of, settled down and matured, obviously, and said, okay, I'm going at my pace. I'm going to give everything 100%, but, I'm going at my pace. I'm not chasing anyone's results. I'm not looking after what they're doing. I'm just sticking on my road and going after it.
I appreciate the thought you shared there, because it's something I think kids don't hear a lot of, and definitely the parents. Every player and you, there's a point where at some point you struggle a little bit with your confidence, right? But you keep going. But the struggles with the confidence, that's for everybody. I think one might look at your ranking, from juniors to pros, and they'll be like, oh, I dream of having that. That must be so amazing, without knowing, like, yeah, but it's within your reality. You still had your own struggles, your own expectations at some points, and you had to reset and relook at yourself. And that's actually normal. All right. So it's not just a straight shot up with, I believe, I win, and there I am. So everyone has that little plateau for a little bit, and then they go. Not everybody is Alcaraz. And even then, Alcaraz within his own, if people look at his results, he plateaued for a little bit at his own age, at his own time. But there were times where he lost first, second round of challengers and wasn't going straight up. So I appreciate you sharing that. Like, you had to re-identify some stuff, find your new identity, and especially the size thing. Because I definitely wanted to ask you that because that's also not talked about. Now, I mean, I got a firsthand look seeing it with Riley, so I got to see like how, yeah, you might grow a lot when you're young and it helps you, but then when it comes to moving up to the pro level, when movement comes in play a lot more, points get a little bit longer, they can return some of these balls. Your body's big. You might have grown so much, you just get hurt because you're just not ready to sustain that kind of size. And did you feel like because I've seen this as well, like with that growth, like you almost have to refine your spacing and swings on the court, where you should stand. Maybe you got to play a little farther back to work up. Do you find yourself going through that?
Yeah, I've had a lot of arguments, and I still do a little bit here. Arguments, disagreements with my team, with my dad. Is I grew so much in such a short period of time and at a young age, and yeah, I can look. I remember Andy Brandy, who was my coach at a young age. I remember sitting and watching Riley's practices when Riley was 18, 19. But yeah, I can watch them all day, but I need to figure out on my own as well, And like you said, I personally think I need to be farther back behind the baseline, so I have the time to have my maximum, swing path and going into the ball. So yeah, people sometimes watch me like, man, why is Martin so far behind the baseline? It's because I need the time. I have, just my arms, everything. I need the time to prepare and go into the ball. So yeah, I had so much learning to do. I still do. I was last year in the summer, I was 450 playing features, and now I'm getting ready to go to my first French Open, men's. So the level again has gone up, and now I again need to work with the level I'm playing at on red clay, at my worst surface. It's pretty obvious it's my worst surface. So I need to look at it as like, okay, how do I get better? How do I beat these guys? And that's what I went through from 15 up until 19, 20, was figuring out what works for me the best against certain players on certain surfaces. And obviously, Riley being older than me, and John, and having other tall guys in tennis, it made it easier to kind of watch their matches and figure things out. But every player is different. Everyone plays differently, and like you said, it's my time, and I gotta kind of deal with those things myself.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll finish off with two questions. If you had to just give one simple piece of advice to juniors or parents, that are trying to figure out what the best way is to just go about their journey and everything, what would you say to them?
I would say the first thing is have fun, not chase results, not worry about other people or other players. Everyone has their own path, and give it your all, and don't put a limit on yourself. Just because you weren't good in 12s, 14 doesn't mean you can't be good at 18, and vice versa. Just because you're good at 12, 14, even if you're 3 in the world like I was, doesn't mean you're going to be a good professional. The bottom line is have fun, love the sport, love the people you're around, and give it your all. And whatever happens at the end of the day is what happens. But at least you can, say, I had fun, my parents were supportive, and I gave it my all. And I've seen so many examples of, parents wanting it more than the players. And I think once that happens, basically no chance. You gotta want it the most out of everyone you're around, and have fun and love the game.
A lot of people would say for you to have gotten to the success that you've gotten as juniors, and now that you have it as a pro, it's just natural born given talent, right? You were just born with it. You just needed to play tennis. It was passed down from your genetics, from your dad, as opposed to just straight up hard work. How much do you attribute like your success to the work you put in versus the talent you've had?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. Obviously, my dad being a tennis player has helped, but look at all the other top players whose parents weren't tennis players. Just because my dad played doesn't mean I'm going to be a great tennis player. He's helped me in different aspects on how to go about the business, and he's helped me with traveling and scheduling and all these things. But at the end of the day, my success is 99% mine. If I'm comparing it to my dad, he's helped me start, but I'm the one that has to figure everything out on the court. I got to do my own practices. I'm at an age where I'm doing everything. I'm the CEO of my company, basically, right? I'm the one making the calls. So just because your parents weren't athletes or anything doesn't mean you can't be a great tennis player or athlete in your sport. If you work hard, I think work ethic beats talent at the end of the day. Yeah, this talent help, yeah, but at the end of the day, you still gotta go out and put in the hours, put in the work, and that's what's gonna win you matches in the long run. Could you get away with a few matches? Yes, you can. But at the end of the day, it's about every single day working hard and being at 100% in every aspect of your game. I think that's just the truth, and there's no way around it.
Awesome stuff, man. Well, look, I appreciate you giving us the time as you prepare to go play over in the French. So, hopefully get some nice warm weather over there, and it's not one of these cold European summers. Yeah, just really appreciate it, and thanks for sharing all your stuff here and your stories. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. It was fun. Thanks.
Thanks, man. Well, I hope you enjoyed that podcast. I know for me, the things that really stood out were his thoughts on, when he had to give up college tennis, that he's just given up college tennis. He's not giving up getting a degree. He can still go back to college and be there in person. He can still have that college life if he wants. He can still get a degree. That really stood out to me because I tend to forget that as well when we think about going pro. And just his honesty about having to find his new identity, which was really interesting. He had one game style when he was a junior, and then when he became a pro, he had to find a new one as he had this new body, this new size, and the game is different at the pro space than it is in the juniors. So now he needs to figure out how to win with them. So really awesome. I actually enjoyed this even more when I listened to it again. So, good luck to Marty as he gets ready for the French Open, and hope you all enjoyed this podcast.